My junior year of college, my life was falling apart. I was trying out a new sport in college. I'd switched from soccer to running cross country, so I was always tired. I had had my heart broken. I'd been broken up with in a really disturbing way, and I was just questioning everything that was going on in my life, and my faith was crumbling. So I went to the priest that I was closest with, a woman named Anwyn Myers, who was the associate chaplain at Swanee, where I was going to school at the time. And I walked into the beautiful stone office that she occupied at All Saints Chapel, and there I basically word vomited all over her. I said everything that was on my heart and mind, and she held all of that so beautifully. She had been sort of like a second mother to me up until that point. And it was in that moment that something shifted. And she became not just a second mother to me, but also a saint. Now, I'll return to that story in just a moment. But speaking of saints, happy All Saints Sunday! Woohoo! Now, we at All Saints, this is our namesake feast, and we get to double dip this feast. We get to celebrate it on November 1st, and we also get to celebrate it on the Sunday closest to November 1st. So this past Wednesday night, we had this beautiful contemplative service of remembrance. Kudos to Elena and Robin and our whole youth and children's music program for leading our praise. We had this beautiful altar of remembrance up here where people brought up images of loved ones or lit candles. And in the program notes or the bulletin, we had this statement from the Iona community over in Scotland about the differences between All Saints and All Souls. Now, All Saints Day is a day when we remember those whose names we hold on to. St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Mary Magdalene, more recently, St. Martin Luther King Jr., or from our own tradition, St. Barbara Harris, the first female bishop in the Episcopal Church, right? These saints we hold up. Now, All Souls is that day of remembrance when we remember the faithful departed. Perhaps the rest of the world doesn't know their names, but we do. Well, I tend to think that we can actually combine those things because there are people in my life, and I'm sure people in your life, who have been saints, even if the rest of the church doesn't recognize them as such. They're saints to you or to me. So, the question must be asked, what makes someone a saint? Now, if we just go with the word itself, it shares its root word with sanctus. Y'all know that song of praise that we sing during the Eucharist, holy, holy, holy. So saints are holy ones, but that sounds pretty intimidating if you ask me, if we're supposed to be holy. But to be holy really means to be set apart for God's work in this world. And I have a little secret for you. You have been set apart for God's work in this world. Collins, whom we will baptize in just a minute, Collins is set apart for God's work in this world. So that's one way to think about a saint. There's another way, if we go back, way back to the early church, they actually called one another saint. Not just St. Peter or St. Paul, but also St. Lydia or St. Dorcas or St. So-and-so. I love St. So-and-so. So there are some that we won't remember their names, but in the early church, they were the ones who followed in the way of Christ. So holy ones set apart for God's work in this world, and also those who walk in the way of Christ. So that's two ways of thinking about saints, but I have another way of thinking about saints, and of course I've got some props. I am the child of two theater professors, so of course I've got to have some props. This is a picture of you all. This is the 11 o'clock congregation on Pentecost. It was a little low because it was Memorial Day weekend, but maybe you're in this picture, and It's a picture of the saints. Now, it was taken on Pentecost Sunday. We are part of the Western branch of Christianity, and we celebrate All Saints Sunday right here in November. But if we were part of the Eastern branch of Christianity, they actually celebrate Pentecost, or they celebrate All Saints Sunday the week after Pentecost. And the reason they do that is because they believe that the Spirit was moving in Pentecost, and it keeps moving in us as saints. And you know what? The way that they describe saints is so beautiful. They say that to be a saint is to become the gospel to someone else. To become the gospel, the good news to someone else. I want to go back to my friend, my saint, Anwen. She became the gospel to me. When I had poured out my heart in her office, she held that so beautifully. And as I was expressing that my faith was falling apart, she said to me, "You don't have to have this great faith, the faith of your fathers and mothers. You just have to have faith the size of a mustard seed. And even if you do not have faith in God, God has faith in you." She helped me to see that I was still a part of something much, much larger than myself. Just like all of us are part of something much, much larger than just ourselves. And when my life felt like it was falling apart, it was almost like the Beatitudes were becoming my life. I was feeling poor in spirit, and maybe I didn't feel as though the world around me was blessing me. But in that moment of Anwen kind of holding me, I was discovering that God's blessings don't always look like the blessings of this world. Now, I got some more show and tell for this morning. So speaking of our friends over in the Eastern Orthodox Church, this is an icon of all the saints. It's beautiful. It's been hanging in Holy Family Chapel for many, many years, and maybe you've never taken a look at it. I'm going to leave it up here so on your way to communion you can look at it a little bit more closely. But there's a lot happening in this beautiful image from our brothers and sisters over in the Eastern Orthodox Church. This comes from about the 7th century, although this is not actually from the 7th century. It's a copy of it. So, in the middle, you'll notice that there is Christ. Christ is surrounded by all these different saints. And we've got King David, who said that he loves God's friends. And we have King Solomon, who speaks of the multitude of all the saints that cannot even be numbered. Now, there's some other cool things. Mary, the bearer of God. John the baptizer. We have images of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We have Adam and Eve being pulled up into the saints. We have Abraham carrying those who were untimely born to be part of all the saints. And perhaps my favorite image is down here at the bottom. This is a figure that is carrying a cross. You probably can't even see it from where you are. But this is the repentant thief who hung next to Jesus and who repented and turned towards God and was welcomed into paradise. Now, you might not have been in that picture that I held up earlier from Pentecost, but you're in this picture. You are part of this. You are numbered among these saints. And not just when you get it right, not just when you have everything put together. All of us are called to be a part of this movement of the saints, this movement of the Spirit. We are all holy, set apart for God's holy work in this world. All of us are called to be on the way of Christ. And each and every single one of us are called to be and to become the good news of Christ to others. Now, not long after Pentecost, we were in a staff meeting, and we were talking about how we could kind of express the truth of who we are. Everything is about marketing these days, which is just ridiculous. But we were trying to express the truth of who we are. And we were like, well, we are all saints. And it was kind of this moment, not unlike when you're thinking about like Penn State football, when they're like, we are Penn State, or we are Marshall. And we started to say, well, we are all saints. But Brian, our fantastic communications director, who I consider to be quite a saint, had this epiphany. And he said, well, it's not just like we are all saints, like that's who we are, but like literally, the truth is we are all saints. And now you can have your very own t-shirt that expresses this truth to your neighbor so you won't forget it. So if you remember nothing else today, remember that we are all saints. And for that, thanks be to God.